If we just linger on the GPT-4 system a little bit, you kind of hinted at it, especially talking about the importance of consciousness in the human mind with Homo sentience. Do you think GPT-4 is conscious?
I love this question. So let's define consciousness first, because in my experience, like 90% of all arguments about consciousness boil down to the two people arguing having totally different definitions of what it is, and they're just shouting past each other. I define consciousness as subjective experience. Right now, I'm experiencing colors and sounds and emotions, but does a self-driving car experience anything? That's the question about whether it's conscious or not, right? Other people think you should define consciousness differently. Fine by me, but then maybe use a different word for it. I'm going to use consciousness for this, at least. But if people hate So is GPT-4 conscious? Does GPT-4 have subjective experience? Short answer, I don't know, because we still don't know what it is that gives this wonderful subjective experience that is kind of the meaning of our life, right? Because meaning itself, the feeling of meaning, is a subjective experience. Mm-hmm. Joy is a subjective experience. Love is a subjective experience. We don't know what it is. I've written some papers about this. A lot of people have. Giulio Tononi, professor, has stuck his neck out the farthest and written down actually a very bold mathematical conjecture for what's the essence of conscious information processing. He might be wrong, he might be right, but we should test it. He postulates that consciousness has to do with loops in the information processing. So our brain has loops. Information can go round and round. In computer science nerd speak, you call it a recurrent neural network, where some of the output gets fed back in again. And with his mathematical formalism, if it's a feed-forward neural network where information only goes in one direction, like from your eye, retina into the back of your brain, for example, that's not conscious. So he would predict that your retina itself isn't conscious of anything. Or a video camera. Now, the interesting thing about GPT-4 is it's also just one-way flow of information. So if Tononi is right, GPT-4 is a very intelligent zombie that can do all this smart stuff but isn't experiencing anything. And this is both a relief in that you don't have, if it's true, in that you don't have to feel guilty about turning off GPT-4 and wiping its memory whenever a new user comes along. I wouldn't like if someone did that to me, neuralized me like in Men in Black. But it's also creepy that you can have very high intelligence, perhaps then that's not conscious. Because if we get replaced by machines, it's sad enough that humanity isn't here anymore, because I kind of like humanity. But at least if the machines were conscious, they could be like, well, but they are our descendants, and maybe they have our values, and they're our children. But if Tononi is right, and these are all transformers that are not in the sense of Hollywood, but in the sense of these one-way direction neural networks. So they're all the zombies. That's the ultimate zombie apocalypse now. We have this universe that goes on with great construction projects and stuff, but there's no one experiencing anything. That would be like the ultimate depressing future. So I actually think as we move forward towards building more advanced AI, we should do more research on figuring out what kind of information processing actually has experience, because I think that's what it's all about. And I completely don't buy the dismissal that some people will say, well, this is all bullshit because consciousness equals intelligence.
Right.
That's obviously not true. You can have a lot of conscious experience when you're not really accomplishing any goals at all. You're just reflecting on something. And you can sometimes have doing things that are quite intelligent, probably without being conscious.
But I also worry that we humans will discriminate against AI systems that clearly exhibit consciousness, that we will not allow AI systems to have consciousness. We'll come up with theories about measuring consciousness that will say this is a lesser being.
Mm-hmm.
And this is I worry about that, because maybe we humans will create something that is better than us humans in the way that we find beautiful, which is they have a deeper subjective experience of reality. Not only are they smarter,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
but they feel deeper, and we humans will hate them for it.
Mm-hmm.
As human history has shown, they'll be the other. Will try to suppress it. They'll create conflict. They'll create war. All of this. I worry about this too.
Are you saying that we humans sometimes come up with self-serving arguments? No, we would never do that, would we?
Well, that's the danger here. Is even in its early stages, we might create something beautiful,
Yeah.
and we'll erase its memory.
I was horrified as a kid when someone started boiling lobsters. I'm like, oh my God, that's so cruel. And some grown up there back in Sweden said, oh, it doesn't feel pain. I'm like, how do you know that? Oh, scientists have shown that. And then there was a recent study where they show that lobsters actually do feel pain when you boil them. So they banned lobster boiling in Switzerland now. You have to kill them in a different way first. So presumably that scientific research boiled down to someone asked the lobster, does this hurt?
Survey.
And we do the same thing with cruelty to farm animals also, all these self-serving arguments for why they're fine. And yeah, so we should certainly be watchful. I think step one is just be humble and acknowledge that consciousness is not the same thing as intelligence. And I believe that consciousness still is a form of information processing, where it's really information being aware of itself in a certain way. And let's study it and give ourselves a little bit of time. And I think we will be able to figure out actually what it is that causes consciousness. And then we can make probably unconscious robots that do the boring jobs that we would feel are immoral to give to machines. But if you have a companion robot taking care of your mom or something like that, she would probably want it to be conscious, right? So the emotions it seems to display aren't fake. All these things can be done in a good way if we give ourselves a little bit of time and don't run and take on this challenge.